The engine roared like a wounded beast, coughing thick smoke into the dusty roadside air as the towering Harley finally died beneath trembling hands. The man who owned it, a broad-shouldered biker with a dark vest and a presence that made people step back, watched in disbelief as a poor girl, barely in her late teens, wiped grease across her cheek and tightened the final bolt without asking for a single rupee. But when he glanced at her wrist, at the long, jagged scar hidden beneath her sleeve, something inside him broke. And in that moment, everything changed, but not in the way anyone standing there could have imagined. Before we continue, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and stories that restore faith in humanity, take a moment to like this video, comment your thoughts, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to Only Kindness to keep these stories alive. The roadside workshop wasn't really a workshop at all. It was a crumbling tin shed on the edge of a forgotten highway, where trucks passed like distant thunder and life moved on without ever stopping. Inside, tools hung from rusted nails, and the smell of oil clung to the air like an old memory that refused to fade. That was where Zoya lived, worked, and survived. At just 19, she carried a weight that most people twice her age couldn't bear. Her clothes were worn, her hands were always dirty, and her eyes held a quiet sadness that no one ever asked about. Zoya had learned everything from her father before he disappeared one night, leaving behind nothing but debts and silence. Since then, she had been fixing engines for whoever stopped by, charging barely enough to eat. Some days she went hungry, but she never turned anyone away. It wasn't just about money, it was about proving to herself that she could still build something in a world that had taken everything from her. That afternoon, when the Harley rolled in, the air shifted. The bike alone was worth more than everything Zoya owned combined. And the man who rode it, Razin, was not someone people easily forgot. His leather vest bore the unmistakable mark of the Hells Angels, and his face carried years of hardened experience. The other bikers who followed him stayed back, watching silently as he approached the shed. Most people would have been afraid. Zoya wasn't. She knelt beside the bike, her fingers moving with instinctive precision. The engine was in bad shape, damaged from a long ride pushed too far. She didn't ask questions. She didn't hesitate. For nearly 2 hours, she worked under the blazing sun, her face streaked with sweat and grease, her focus unshaken even when her stomach growled from hunger. Razin watched her the entire time. At first, it was curiosity. Then it became something else, something deeper. There was a quiet strength in the way she worked, a determination that didn't match her fragile appearance. It reminded him of something he had buried long ago. When she finally finished, she stepped back and nodded. The engine came alive with a smooth, powerful growl, as if it had been reborn. Razin reached for his wallet, pulling out a thick roll of cash. But Zoya shook her head. She didn't want anything. He frowned, confused. No one ever refused money, especially not someone who clearly needed it. He insisted, but she simply smiled faintly and said she didn't fix things for money when someone truly needed help. There was no pride in her voice, no performance. Just quiet honesty. That was when he noticed it. As she wiped her hands on a cloth, her sleeve slipped back slightly, revealing a long, pale scar running across her wrist. It wasn't the kind of mark you got from an accident. It was deeper, older, a silent story carved into her skin. Razin froze. Memories hit him like a storm he couldn't escape. A small hand reaching for his. A frightened voice calling his name. A night filled with fire, chaos, and a decision he had never forgiven himself for. Years ago, he had lost someone, a little sister who had vanished in a world too cruel to protect her. He had searched for her, failed, and buried the guilt under a life of violence and distance. And now, standing in front of him, was a girl with the same scar. The same mark. His chest tightened as realization crept in, slow and unbearable. He didn't ask her directly. He couldn't. Instead, he asked about her past, carefully, gently, like someone afraid of breaking something fragile. Zoya hesitated. She didn't like talking about it. But something in his eyes made her trust him. She spoke about fragments, a house she barely remembered, a brother who used to carry her on his shoulders, a fire that took everything, and waking up alone in a world that didn't care if she lived or died. Each word hit Razin harder than the last. It was her. Against all odds, against time, against everything, it was her. The girl he thought he had lost forever. The silence that followed was heavy, almost unbearable. Razin stepped back, running a hand through his hair, his tough exterior cracking under emotions he had locked away for years. For the first time in a long time, he looked lost. And then he did the unbelievable. He dropped to his knees in front of her. The same man who commanded fear, who led a brotherhood of bikers across cities, bowed his head like a broken man. He didn't care who was watching. He didn't care what it meant for his image. All that mattered was the girl standing in front of him. His sister. Zoya stared at him, confused at first, then overwhelmed as the truth unfolded. The pieces came together slowly, painfully, beautifully. The brother she thought was gone, was right there. The world seemed to stop as years of pain, loneliness, and unanswered questions finally found their meaning. Tears blurred her vision as she stepped forward, unsure, afraid to believe it was real. But when he looked up, his eyes filled with regret and love, she knew. She wasn't alone anymore. From that day on, everything changed. Raisin didn't just take her away from the roadside, he gave her a life she never dared to imagine. A real workshop, proper tools, a place where she could grow. But more importantly, he gave her something she had been missing all along. A family. And yet, the most powerful part of the story wasn't what he gave her, it was what she had already given him. Redemption. A chance to heal. A reason to become someone better. If this story touched your heart, don't just scroll away. Take a moment to like, comment, and share it, because stories like these remind us that even in the darkest places, kindness can still find its way through. And before we end, tell us in the comments, do you believe that small acts of kindness can truly change someone's life? Because sometimes, all it takes is one free repair, to fix something much bigger than a broken machine.